for appearing before us today, and we look forward to hearing your testimony. This subcommittee frequently hears about the threats that we will face in the coming years. We know that Russia and China are modernizing and diversifying their nuclear forces. We know that these nations have a no-limits partnership and are working together more closely than we ever anticipated. And we know that our modernization efforts have slipped. There are many reasons for these delays, but this afternoon I want to hear from our witnesses about what the Department of Energy and Defense are doing to move forward with nuclear modernization. Today, we welcome two panels of witnesses. On our first panel, we have Mr. James J. McConnell and Mr. Roger Jarrell, did I say that correctly? Jarrell, from the National Nuclear Security Administration, and Admiral William Houston from the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program. On our second panel, we have Mr. David Hoagland from NNSA, General Thomas Bussiere from Air Force Global Strike Command, and Vice Admiral Johnny Wolfe from the Navy Strategic Systems Programs. We also have Dr. Brandi Vann, who is performing the duties of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear, Chemical, and Biological Defense Policy and Programs. This subcommittee was instrumental in creating that position in Section 1621 of last year's NDAA. And we did so because we observed a lack of clear leadership within the Office of the Secretary of Defense for the nuclear enterprise. I understand the implementation plan for Section 1621 has yet to be submitted to Congress. This delay does not instill confidence that the Department is taking these reforms with the seriousness they deserve. Before I turn it over to Senator King, I do want to congratulate NNSA on completing the first production unit of the new B-61-13 nuclear bomb, which provides the President with additional options to go after harder targets. I look forward to hearing more about how NNSA was able to achieve this so quickly and what opportunities exist to take lessons learned from manufacturing the B-61-13 and apply them to other production lines. Senator King, you are recognized for any remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's important to emphasize at the beginning of this hearing why nuclear weapons. Why is it that we have this focus on your production of nuclear weapons and also on our strategic delivery platforms? It's because of deterrence. The whole idea of nuclear weapons is to never have to use them. And they will never have to be used as long as our adversaries are convinced that if they use nuclear weapons first, they will pay a terrible and unacceptable price. So I think it's important that we remember the fundamental purpose of this whole enterprise, which is to make this country safer and to avoid the use of these unthinkable weapons. Every year, or probably every 12 months or so, I speak at the launch of a new destroyer at Bath Iron Works in Maine. And my remarks always have a similar theme, which is we're building these ships in the hopes that they will never have to be used in conflict. Because having them there, having the capability that you're responsible for developing is what keeps this country safe and avoids the unthinkable, which is a nuclear confrontation. I am concerned, and I'm sure we'll examine these questions during the course of the hearing, with issues of staffing, whether it's at Hanford or at the national labs or in NNSA generally, because we can't solve these problems. We can't meet the demands that are being placed upon you without the people. And I'm worried that we've lost, in the past few months, some pretty important people, some very capable people. And I want to be sure that the expertise that those people carried with them is being transferred to new staff coming on, and that we're adequately staffing various departments and bureaus in order to be sure that we can meet the demands. We're now well into the modernization of the nuclear triad with missiles, with the bomber, with the new Columbia-class submarine. But they have to have the weapons in order to make them the effective deterrent, and that's where NNSA comes in. So I'm looking forward to the hearing, and I hope you will address issues of staffing and adequacy of staffing, because I am concerned that that could hobble our ability to meet the very high level of demand that we have in the nuclear modernization project. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator King. Now I look forward to hearing the opening statements from our first members of the panel. Mr. McConnell, you are recognized.
Chairman Fisher, Ranker Member King, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration. With the support of the administration and Congress, NNSA is executing its vital national security missions, which cannot be accomplished anywhere else in the U.S. government. Not since the Cold War have we had 7 simultaneous weapon programs in the program of record, and not since the Manhattan Project have we so fundamentally overhauled our infrastructure. Within these monumental tasks, I am proud to report on some of NNSA's accomplishments. NNSA is simultaneously delivering major stockpile modernization programs that cover all 3 legs of the nuclear triad, introducing new capabilities for the President to strengthen deterrence. Noticeably, the first War Reserve plutonium pit for the W-87-1 warhead was produced at Los Alamos National Laboratory in October. Last December, the B-61-12 life extension program, which improved the B-61 safety, security, and reliability, completed its last production unit. Additionally, NNSA achieved the first production unit for the B-61-13 just yesterday, almost a year ahead of schedule. Alongside stockpile modernization efforts, NNSA must design new materials for future stockpile needs, certify components, and assess the stockpile's condition annually. Our world-class science and technology capabilities ensure that our stockpile is safe, secure, reliable, and effective without underground nuclear explosive testing. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory recently installed El Capitan, our first exascale computer system for national security. It has been benchmarked as the world's fastest supercomputer and is running full 3D nuclear weapons simulations in support of stockpile stewardship activities. Infrastructure modernization across the enterprise is required to meet today's needs and provide enduring, flexible, and resilient capabilities. To this end, the enterprise blueprint aligns timely delivery of specialized infrastructure with mission demands over the next 25 years. We are making progress on large and small-scale projects. The uranium processing facility is now over 70% complete, with operations planned to begin in 2032. Reestablishing the capability to produce new plutonium pits remains a priority, and we continue to make progress at the Los Alamos Plutonium Pit Production Project and the Savannah River Plutonium Processing Facility. The Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation Program is another key element of our national deterrence and helps to keep nuclear and radiological threats as far from the U.S. homeland as possible. As the share of nuclear power in the global energy mix grows, NNSA facilitates the global deployment of U.S.-developed nuclear reactors that incorporate the highest standards of nuclear safeguards, security, and proliferation resistance. This work would not be possible without the dedicated professionals of the federal and contractor workforce. We are grateful for Congress's continued support. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Jarrell, welcome.
Chairwoman Fisher, Ranking Member King, and members of the subcommittee, it's an honor to appear before you today. The EM program was born out of the Manhattan Project, a monumental effort that helped end World War II and win the Cold War. Today, EM is entrusted with the largest environmental cleanup effort in the world. Enabled by significant investments from Congress, EM is leveraging the best of American industry to achieve our mission safely and effectively. The budget request reflects the Trump administration's strong commitment to the EM mission and what it brings to the American people. With treatment capabilities in place addressing radioactive tank waste safely, effectively and efficiently is a top priority for EM. Key demolitions are advancing, including at West Valley, where the last major building is set to come down next month. In Nevada, we're on track to complete legacy cleanup over the next 5 years. In addressing legacy waste of the past, EM is helping launch a golden era of American energy, driving innovation and enabling national security missions of the future. This is vividly on display in Tennessee. Transformational progress there is unleashing commercial nuclear power and supporting modernization of NNSA's Y-12 complex and the Oak Ridge National Lab. Management responsibilities for the Savannah River site have been successfully transferred to NNSA. In Idaho, our team is helping with key demolitions for naval reactors. And this spring, we completed key infrastructure upgrades at WIP so the facility can support DOE missions for years to come. As we execute our mission, we're looking forward to ways to deliver cleanup commitments more efficiently without sacrificing safety or effectiveness. Just last month, we completed the 2,000-gallon testbed initiative. It's a tool that's helping us look at options with the potential to address Hanford tank waste sooner, safer, and at less cost to the American taxpayers. I thank the subcommittee for this longstanding support of our program. I look forward to working with you and to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Admiral Houston, welcome. It's good to see you again.
It's great seeing you too, Chair Fisher. Chair Fisher, Ranking Member King, distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Your support for the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program enables my team to design, operate, and maintains the world's preeminent force of submarines and aircraft carriers that routinely carry out high-priority national security missions around the world. Through decades of investment in research and development, Naval Reactors has delivered the advanced technology that assures the U.S. Navy's current dominance. Our talented and dedicated people, peerless technology, and state-of-the-art facilities give us the ability to operate our nuclear fleet wherever and whenever we choose. To continue as the greatest naval force on the planet, we must continue to invest if we want to sustain our advantage. This year, Naval Reactors will prioritize 3 key areas and 2 priority projects. First, our most important resource, our people. The people within the Naval Nuclear Propulsion enterprise are essential to the management and oversight of the important work we perform for our nation. Second, we will continue to focus on research and development of technologies that support our current and future fleets to reduce overall costs, shorten construction timelines, and add capability to the fleet. Finally, we'll continue to execute efforts that modernize and sustain critical infrastructure throughout our aging DOE laboratories. I'm seeking your continued support for 2 national priority projects. The first is the continued development of the reactor plant for the Columbia-class ballistic missile submarine, directly supporting the Navy's #1 acquisition priority. And the second project is continued construction of the Navy's spent fuel handling facility in Idaho, which enables long-term reliable processing of spent fuel from the Navy's nuclear fleet. We continue to experience challenges with this project, but I've been to the site multiple times in the last year and progress is visible. In closing, your strong and enduring support enables the Naval Reactors to succeed and continue to excel over 76 years beyond the early days of Admiral Rickover. I respectfully urge your continued support across our efforts this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral. The committee will now start our first round of questioning, 5-minute round, please. Mr. McConnell, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I commend NNSA's workforce for their dedication and speed in delivering the first production unit of the B-61-13. In this setting, are there any lessons learned from the production of the B-61-13 that can be applied to other production lines?
Thank you, Senator. Most definitely there are. The clear collaboration and alignment between the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy and NNSA from the beginning of the initiation of the B-61-13 concept allowed us to move promptly into a design and approval process which allowed for maximum use of the production capabilities that had been established for the B-61-12 and allow us to very efficiently and effectively transition from the last production unit of the B-61-12 into the first production unit of the B-61-13 using very similar production and equipment components. So that ability to maximize efficiency and minimize the transition time, and to add another capability to the President and the warfighters to address, as you had said in your opening remarks, harder and larger targets with the B-6113, allowed us to fill a need in our deterrence and address that very quickly.
Do you see any other opportunities where we can increase the and accelerate the weapons production?
So NNSA has for quite a while had a program to enhance stockpile responsiveness, which is a across-the-board effort to identify opportunities to improve the efficiency of everything from design, through design for manufacturing, through production certification, and rate production through this effort that's been underway for, as I said, years now. At the same time, we're looking to do more accelerated capabilities and create an office that would allow us to be even more focused on identifying new and novel ways to bring options to the President and the warfighters to address ongoing and new needs.
Last October, you released your enterprise blueprint, and that outlined the plans for recapitalizing major infrastructure projects over the next 25 years. And that includes how it will replace facilities that date back to the Manhattan Project. I appreciate the level of thought that went into those plans, including the careful sequencing to ensure that new facilities come online as they're needed so it can support the production of our nuclear weapons. Can you provide us with an update about the ongoing capital assets projects?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your continued attention and awareness to our enterprise blueprint and the opportunity that it represents.
I find it very exciting, the opportunity it presents. I hope it's followed.
Very much so. We have laid out a very, as you indicated, a very thoughtful and careful and not extreme list of key facilities that are necessary over the next 25 years to produce a agile and responsive and resilient nuclear security enterprise that is fit for the challenges that we will face. It is time-phased to make sure that we bring the facilities on in order that they're needed to produce the actual products that we deliver to the Department of Defense, so there is a logic and a sequencing to it. Nonetheless, it is a fairly large group of things to be done. Thankfully, the President's budget is strongly supportive of nuclear modernization, and we are off to a very good start to execute the facilities that are in the first, earliest phase of that time-sequenced enterprise blueprint.
In your opening comments, sir, you, in passing, I felt it was in passing, you mentioned Savannah River. Can you provide us with an update on Savannah River and the plutonium processing facility there?
Yeah, so a couple different things. My colleague discussed that we have transitioned the site itself from an Office of Environmental Management focused site to NNSA as the landlord for the entire site in recognition of our long and continuing and growing need for operations at Savannah River, not the least of which is the Savannah River Plutonium Production Facility. That facility is well underway under design. We look forward to achieving the 90% design threshold, a key threshold for us for having significant understanding of the expectations, requirements, and design details of the facility in calendar year 2026. There are other things going on in parallel. We need the facility. We also need the talented people to man the facility. And for example, our welding certification facility is up and running, and so now we are putting students through in order to be able to have talented and capable, skilled craft in the numbers we need with the certifications we need to execute the mission as soon as the facility itself is ready.
Are you comfortable with the schedule you're on?
We need to do everything fast. Time is our most significant figure of merit. It is a very complicated, large, and difficult facility to construct. We are on a good time frame. We are making progress to meet our expected milestones, but major one-of-a-kind, high-hazard nuclear facilities like these are always difficult to manage, and I would always like to have more margin.
Thank you, sir. Senator King, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McConnell, I think one of the most underappreciated risks that this country faces is the danger of terrorists getting a hold of nuclear materials. And my frustration is that I can't find where in the whole federal enterprise somebody's in charge of thinking about that. So I'm going to start with you. But all of our attention is to our near-peer adversaries, and I understand that. But if nuclear materials and a rudimentary explosive device fell into the hands of a terrorist group, deterrence doesn't work. They don't have a capital city to destroy. They don't care about dying. And the damage on a nuclear device in a tramp steamer headed into the port of New York would be incalculable. And so talk to me about proliferation and how we keep our own materials safe, but how can we think about this in a broader sense? For example, developing technology to sense nuclear materials in places where they shouldn't be.
Thank you for the question, Senator. Your question in your opening remarks, you talked about the deterrent with a T, the safe, secure, and reliable nuclear deterrent that we are responsible for. We are also responsible for many other aspects of deterrence with a C, including our Office of Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation and the Office of Counterterrorism Counterproliferation.
Is that within NNSA?
Those are within NNSA. They are a Senate-confirmed presidential appointee at the same rank and the same position as our Deputy Administrator for Defense Programs. The Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation mission includes the efforts to figure out how to frustrate and prevent risks posed by non-state actors. You're absolutely right, sir. The non-state actors are not deterred in the same way as the state actors are. We have an integrated system between Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation and the Counterterrorism Counterproliferation folks, with the support of the scientists and engineers and capabilities of the defense programs part.
And I would hope also the intelligence community.
And the intelligence community and our Defense Department of Energy intelligence group to prevent, counter, and respond to those threats. Our approach is to make sure that it is extremely difficult, virtually impossible for those non-state actors to get access to the material and the technology that is necessary to create a device and to make the penalty they pay for attempting to acquire that material or that knowledge very high, and to make sure that our ability to detect and to counter and prevent any efforts are successful so that we can maintain safety and security and provide that deterrence as far from the U.S. shores as possible.
I agree, and I appreciate that. I just hope this will maintain a high level of focus because, as I say, I think it's a somewhat underappreciated risk when we're talking about national security. I view this as one of the most serious that we face. Let me talk for a moment about staffing. As you know, there was a 16% cut initially, and people came back. Now I think we're talking about an 8% cut in the staffing of NNSA. But my impression is you were understaffed to start with. Has any cost-benefit analysis been made about what the cost to the enterprise is of losing people versus the fairly limited savings from the salary involved?
I'm not aware that we've done an analysis in that parameter space. We have evaluated the risk to our mission of the recent reductions in staff and have found them acceptable for now and in the short term to continue to achieve our mission.
That strikes me as implausible, given the level of the demands being placed upon the agency at this particular moment in time, where we're modernizing, we're developing new weapons, we're trying to get back into the pit business. Downsizing in that situation doesn't strike me as a logical management move.
We believe we are acceptably managing the risk of the status quo. Our mission is increasing over time, and the speed by which our mission is increasing is also getting more rapid. It is important as we go forward with the enterprise blueprint, with the program of record, with all of the work in front of the National Nuclear Security Administration, that as our output requirements and mission requirements increase, that our ability to meet those mission requirements and outputs are commensurate. But we're never going to be able to buy our way to success, and there's limits to that. So a fundamental part of our ability to
There's
achieve.
something between buying your way to success and staff cuts that diminish the ability of the enterprise to meet its goals.
I agree, Senator, and we are going to need to make sure that that our resources are adequate. We are also going to continuously need to look for those productivity and efficiency enhancements that will fundamentally and allow us to unlock additional output and achieve the mission that the nation and the Department of Defense and the President expect of us.
Thank you. I'll have some follow-up questions.
Thank you, Senator King. Senator Rounds, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, gentlemen, thank you for your service to our country. Mr. McConnell, China and Russia are significantly expanding their nuclear arsenals. How is the NNSA adjusting its stockpile stewardship and modernization priorities to maintain a credible deterrence against both near-peer competitors simultaneously? How does the growing parity between Chinese and U.S. nuclear arsenals impact the ability of the U.S. to maintain that nuclear deterrence? And just to throw in just a third one here, just for the heck of it, as the combined nuclear arsenals of Russia and China begin to eclipse that of the U.S. in terms of numbers of warheads, will that increase the likelihood or decrease the interest of our partners or unaligned nations seeking their own nuclear deterrence? So basically, how are we stacking up against our adversaries? What are we doing to stay ahead? And what's that going to do to the stability in the rest of the world?
Thank you, Senator. As I indicated earlier, we are currently engaged in 7 weapon modernization programs at the same time. This is the most active and the highest number of weapon systems we've been producing or working on developing at one time since the height of the Cold War. That is reflective of the requirements that we get from the President, the Strategic Command, and the Nuclear Weapons Council. We are very successful up to this point in delivering. We have delivered the B-6112, the B-6113. We're on track with the W-88, which is to achieve first production unit relatively soon. We're continuing with the other weapon systems, W-87, SLICM-N, W-80-4. All of those programs represent our increased focus on the ability to ensure that the President and the warfighters have the options they need to respond to the geopolitical realities we're in. That is not to say that we're at or trying to get to parity, certainly not parity with the combined capabilities of the Chinese and the Russians, that we can deter and provide the deterrence with a flexible, effective, efficient, and reliable suite of options in our deterrence, which is what we're working on. That combined with our dedicated efforts to improve the physical condition of the nuclear security enterprise, both its production capabilities and its science capabilities that are essential to be able to design, certify, and assess the stockpile, gives us and continues to give us the edge and the confidence that we need to provide deterrence, both for ourselves and somewhat into your last point, is also the extended deterrent that we provide to our allies and our, other friendly nations. And so we are rising to the challenge, but the challenge keeps rising also. And so we will continue on that path.
Let me just, out of curiosity, because we're talking about lots of demand for it, and along with fuel for our carriers and our submarines. Where are we getting our uranium? Can we talk about that in this open setting?
Yes, to a certain extent. So we need uranium for many different uses. We need unencumbered uranium in order to run reactors to produce tritium. We need highly enriched uranium to fuel the Admiral's reactors for our nuclear fleet of submarines and aircraft
No
carriers.
question about the need. I guess my question is, in this open setting, and I'm not sure if we can do it or not, but where are we getting it from?
So we have enough material on hand for the near term, for both unencumbered fuel for production uses and for the Navy, but we are going to need eventually to create a domestic enrichment capability, and that the Department of Energy and the National Nuclear Security Administration are currently on a two-prong effort to do that. We have an activity going on with BWXT to produce the Domestic Uranium Enrichment Centrifuge Experiment. DUCE, it's much easier as an acronym, and then we have the AC-100 also.
I didn't do a very good job of asking it, maybe. Where are we getting our uranium from? Can we talk about that in here?
Perhaps,
Admiral Houston?
and we'll phone a friend.
Yes, Senator. We're getting it from existing stockpiles. We haven't produced highly enriched uranium since 1992. And for my program, which is the primary user, because I actually expend that highly enriched uranium because I'm using it in my reactors, we are good into the 2050s for that. But we are watching, we will need an enrichment capability, just like the weapons complex will need an enrichment capability.
Okay.
And that's part of the enterprise blueprint that's outlined by NNSA to develop that enrichment capability.
So the enrichment capabilities that we will need, we know it. We've got till 2050, but between now and then, we should be talking about it.
Absolutely, Senator, and that's going to be due to the difficulty in standing up that capability.
That's not a 5-year plan either, is it?
It is not. It is a long-term plan across there, and it's laid out in the NNSA blueprint, sir.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. For our next round of questions, I would ask that we just ask one question since we have a second panel coming up. Mr. McConnell, you're getting a workover today. Can you provide us with an update on, no, I want to ask you this one. How are you working to ensure that Los Alamos can meet the demand for pits until Savannah River can do that rate production?
Thank you, Senator. As I indicated, we've hit a major milestone in producing the first diamond-stamped War Reserve W87-1 pit at Los Alamos in October of last year. We are now actively working on the project which will allow us to achieve rate production of at least 30 pits per year at Los Alamos. We call it 30 base. That project is executing right now to deliver approximately 2028, and then we will follow up with additional work to improve the reliability of our ability to deliver. So a more reliable production rate at 30 pits per year, which will take us into the early 2030s. What that work means specifically is we need to move old equipment out of the space to create D&D, we call it. It's another thing that EM does quite a lot of, in order to create white space so that we can then move new work spaces, new glove boxes and capabilities in.
Are you speaking specifically about Los Alamos?
Yes, all of that happens in PF4.
And how that ties in then to what happens at Savannah River?
Right, so by 2028, we get to the 30 pit per year capability at Los Alamos. In parallel, at Savannah River, at the Savannah River Plutonium Production Facility, SRPPF, as I indicated, we're working to mature the design to get to 90% design in calendar year 2026, which will then allow us to move on to construction and production of the plant by 2032 to get to initial production and then rate production of at least 50 pits per year at Savannah River in that time frame.
Thank you. Senator King.
Mr. Jarrell, I'm going to give you a question for the record, so it doesn't count as my one question. If you could supply the committee with some
He gets to do whatever
an analysis of your staffing levels. I know you've lost some key people at Hanford, but for the record, not now, but if you could give me some background on that. Admiral, my question is Naval Reactors on track with the Columbia construction project? In other words, when the submarines are ready, will the new reactors be ready?
Senator King, absolutely. My reactor for District of Columbia is ready. It's just waiting to be shipped when Electric Boat wants it. We don't ship it early just due to security requirements.
Of course.
And the second reactor core is 75% complete now. We don't have issues with that. Our heavy plant equipment has been, we are on schedule to meet required in yard dates, so that's steam generators, pressurizers, reactor coolant pumps. Our largest component, which I've mentioned before, that had the most concern for us was the turbine generator. That port turbine generator is an Electric Boat right now. It's being outfitted, completely tested. Starboard turbine generator has been tested and is being packaged for shipment from the vendor across country, and it is not the critical path on delivery of District of Columbia. So we are within the time frame on that.
Senator Rounds.
I will pass on this.
Okay. With that, I would like to thank our first panel for being here today and providing us with information. You may get other questions for the record, and I would ask that you return those within 2 weeks. Thank you. If we could have the second panel. To our members of Panel 2, we appreciate you being here today. If you are ready, we will take your opening statements. Let's begin with Dr. Vann, please.
Yes, ma'am. Chairwoman Fisher, Ranking Member King, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify here before you today regarding our nuclear forces. As President Trump and Secretary of Defense Hegseth have stated, the United States will achieve peace through strength by rebuilding our military and reestablishing deterrence. Nuclear weapons provide a unique deterrence effect that no other element of our U.S. military power can replace, and our nation must continue to field a flexible and modern nuclear deterrent. These capabilities are critical to the continued safety and security of our American people, our allies and partners, both now and in the future. The Department continues to prioritize nuclear modernization and sustainment of the three legs of the triad and our nuclear command, control, and communications, as well as all the supplemental capabilities to the program of record. Additionally, the Department supports the efforts of Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration to recapitalize, sustain, and operate the nuclear enterprise. The United States must deliver the nuclear modernization program of record while continuing to sustain our legacy systems to avoid a deterrence shortfall and mitigate risk. To that end, the President's top-line budget request for the Department of Defense does include a prioritization of our nuclear modernization and sustainment efforts. The Department of Defense remains staunchly committed to the viability of the United States nuclear deterrent in response to an unprecedented security environment with multiple nuclear challengers, who have not followed our lead as a responsible nuclear power. DoD is acutely aware of the significant challenges that we face and recognizes that urgent action is required. In response to this evolved threat landscape, the Department and the Nuclear Weapons Council continue to make the necessary policy changes and implement necessary actions to address what we acknowledge is a program of record that is necessary but may be insufficient for the realities of the security environment that we will face. We recognize that we must be flexible, efficient, and adaptable to the evolving geopolitical landscape in order to defend the homeland and provide options to the Secretary and the President that bolster deterrence. I want to close by acknowledging the creation of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear Deterrence, Chemical, and Biological Defense Policy and Programs, referred to in the department as the ASD-ND-CBD, who will be at the forefront of the DoD's efforts to sustain and modernize this nuclear deterrent. This position will serve as a key point of accountability to Secretary Hegseth and to Congress on this critical national security mission. Finally, thank you to this committee for your longstanding bipartisan support to our nuclear deterrent mission and to the dedicated professionals across our nuclear enterprise, as well as my colleagues here at the table who work diligently every day to execute this highest priority defense mission. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Vann. Mr. Hoagland, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Fisher, Ranking Member King, and members of the committee. I'm grateful for the opportunity to represent the men and women of the NNSA today. It is an honor to describe the extraordinary range of activities being executed across our nuclear enterprise. NNSA performs national security functions that exist nowhere else in the U.S. government. Among these responsibilities is to ensure the safety, security, and effectiveness of the stockpile, which has been the cornerstone of America's defense for more than 75 years. The foundation of our mission is our workforce, the cadre of scientists, engineers, technicians, federal agents, and others at NNSA and across our enterprise who provide exceptional expertise to our nuclear deterrent. Although this mission has spanned decades, we are now performing it in a strategic environment that grows more challenging with each passing year. The United States must simultaneously deter multiple nuclear-armed adversaries whose own nuclear capabilities continue to advance. To ensure the dependability of our deterrent, NNSA is now modernizing both the legacy stockpile as well as the scientific and the production infrastructure upon which it depends. NNSA is presently executing 7 major stockpile modernization programs covering all 3 legs of the nuclear triad. One recent addition to this program of record, which has been discussed, the B-6113, observed a key milestone this month when we completed the first production unit of the new bomb fully 1 year ahead of schedule. This acceleration was achieved by implementing several technical and programmatic innovations to optimize production, in an approach we hope to apply to future modernization efforts. NNSA has also established a program for the nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missile, which will provide the Navy with considerable new options to deter China in the Indo-Pacific. Work is on schedule for the W-80-4 warhead, the warhead for the Air Force's long-range standoff missile. And beyond these current programs, NNSA is also pursuing 2 formal studies to meet requirements for hard and deeply buried target defeat and next-generation reentry capabilities. Underlying both our stockpile modernization programs and the development of future capabilities is the infrastructure of the weapons complex. As the committee is acutely aware, both our production plants and the facilities used to design, certify, and assess the stockpile are urgently in need of recapitalization. Even as we maintain and operate legacy facilities, we're prioritizing infrastructure investments to align with mission needs over the next quarter century through the enterprise blueprint. In particular, NNSA is advancing multiple large construction projects to provide the strategic materials needed for the deterrent, including plutonium, uranium, lithium, tritium, and high explosives. Successfully meeting NNSA's objectives and in turn ensuring the dependability of the nation's strategic deterrent requires consistent investment. I appreciate Congress's unwavering support of the deterrence mission, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. General Bussiere, welcome. Good to see you.
Chairwoman Fisher, Ranking Member King, members of the distinguished committee. I have the honor of representing the men and women of Air Force Global Strike Command and to be providing you an update today on our mission, our airmen, our ongoing modernization efforts, and the challenges of sustaining our legacy weapon systems. I'd like to thank Congress for your continued support for not only our nation's defense, but for the Air Force's nuclear deterrence and long-range strike missions. My full statement has been submitted for the record. The Air Force Global Strike Team has the privilege of executing our nation's strategic nuclear deterrence and conventional long-range strike missions. My top priority remains maintaining a viable legacy force while modernizing and taking care of our airmen and their families. Modernization efforts include the ICBM leg, the B-21, the B-52J model, the MH-139 Grey Wolf helicopter, the Survivable Airborne Operations Center, our weapons generation facility upgrades, our long-range standoff weapons, and the nuclear command and control and communications architecture. This committee recognizes the serious nuclear threats to our nation. We face the challenge of deterring two major nuclear powers, China and Russia, who possess both modern and diverse arsenals. Additionally, North Korea poses an escalating threat, and there is the potential of a nuclear-armed Iran. This dangerous and unprecedented security environment is further complicated by the increased coordination among these U.S. rivals. This underscores the importance of fielding a flexible and modern nuclear force to effectively deter them. While Global Strike Command leads the charge in sustaining current forces and deploying future long-range strike weapon systems, we do recognize this is the bedrock of our military strength. It's the foundation of our nation's defense and essential for assuring our allies and partners. Equally important to a viable and effective nuclear deterrence is our ability to effectively conduct conventional long-range strike missions. We remain focused on sustaining and modernizing our conventional bombers and fielding improved long-range strike capabilities to provide the nation with a full range of deterrence options. Through it all, our Stryker airmen remain our greatest strength. Their dedication, innovation, resilience make it all possible. But the world is an uncertain place. We must remain vigilant and continue to invest in our airmen and their families and provide them with the resources, training, and support they need to get the job done we're asking them to do. The Air Force nuclear enterprise is in a critical phase of transition. There is no operational margin remaining, and our resources continue to be stretched, impacting the readiness and well-being of our dedicated airmen. Today, I request your continued support as we confront these pressing challenges while upholding our nation's security. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. Admiral Wolfe, good to see you.
Ma'am, good to see you.
Welcome.
Chairwoman Fisher, Ranking Member King, and distinguished members of this subcommittee, it is an honor to be here and a privilege to continue representing the service members, civilians, and families of the Navy Strategic Systems Programs, SSP. I'd like to thank Congress for its continued support in providing us with the resources required to execute our assigned mission. I have submitted my posture statement for the record. I'll begin by assuring you that the Navy's nuclear forces, the bedrock of our national security, are safe, secure, effective, and credible. As the Navy command that provides cost-effective, safe, and secure sea-based strategic deterrent solutions, SSP is entrusted to provide cradle-to-grave life cycle support to three critical programs: the Trident II D5 strategic weapons system, the Navy's Conventional Prompt Strike Hypersonic program, and the Nuclear-Armed Sea-Launched Cruise Missile SLCM-N program. These are three of the nation's highest priority acquisition programs, and with your support, they ensure the Navy is delivering peace through strength. SSP ensures the highest levels of readiness and modernization for the Trident strategic weapons system, which underlies our national strategy to deter any adversary who threatens the United States, our allies, or our interests. As the most survivable leg of the triad, the Ballistic Missile Submarine Force represents a substantial portion of our nation's deployed nuclear warheads, providing an unyielding foundation for assured response against any adversary. The Navy's strategic deterrent stands at a critical juncture. To maintain our advantage in the face of evolving threats, we must prioritize the modernization of our nuclear infrastructure and industrial base. A strong domestic industrial base is the foundation of a credible deterrent. Using resources authorized by this committee, SSP is actively working to revitalize this natural interest, ensuring the timely production and delivery of critical strategic weapon system components while fostering American jobs
and technological superiority. Our modernization needs cannot succeed without investing in research and development, the critical skills for our workforce, and the facilities needed to produce, sustain, and certify our strategic systems. Our infrastructure is also at an inflection point. Existing facilities are reaching their 30-year recapitalization windows as we enter into a once-in-a-generation transition of both the Trident strategic weapons system and the ballistic missile submarine platform. In accordance with the fiscal year 2024 NDAA, SSP has established a Cyclamen Program Office, and over the past year, we have focused on conducting the assessments needed to deliver a weapon system that meets warfighters' needs. Executing this program requires a careful balancing of resources to ensure existing critical Navy and Air Force programs of record and our submarine fleet are not adversely impacted. SSP's mission, strategic deterrence, is critical to this nation. It is the foundation of the National Defense Strategy and is a top priority of the Department of Defense. In order to accomplish all three national missions, SSP relies on a relatively small number of trained, skilled employees, and it is critical that my command is able to appropriately staff its workforce with these highly specialized technical experts. People are as foundational to our nuclear deterrent as the strategic weapons themselves. As the 14th Director of Strategic Systems Programs, I have absolute faith and confidence in the safety, security, effectiveness, and credibility of our nation's strategic deterrent due to the proficiency and professionalism of the dedicated service members and civilians who have made strategic deterrence their life's work. With continued congressional support and stable on-time funding, the Navy will continue to effectively defend our nation and preserve peace for future generations. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Admiral. We will begin our first round of questions, 5-minute questions, please. Admiral Wolfe, I've appreciated our discussions on standing up the Cyclamen. Can you update the committee on the progress that the Navy's made on that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. Yes, as I said, we've stood up our program office. We started to look at what
Have you found that to be helpful?
What to be helpful, ma'am?
That you've got the office stood up?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
What that is faster than you anticipated?
Excuse me, ma'am?
Was it quicker than you anticipated?
I wouldn't say it was quicker than anticipated. We're still trying to ramp up to get the right number of folks. But what that small group of people, since we've stood that up, has been able to do in the last year, we've been able to focus on what are the things that we need to do to get to meeting the requirement of 2034, but as importantly, it's allowed us to work with NNSA in partnership to select a family of warheads. It's allowed us to pulse industry and start to get ideas and new ways of thinking into this system so that we can continue to meet all of the requirements. And we've really started to hone in on what are those concepts and how are we going to integrate this system onto a platform that was never built to carry nuclear weapons. We've had many discussions with this committee in the past about how we're going to do that. And in the last years, we worked with the fleet. We've also been able to get their ideas to understand exactly how we can go about this without impacting the larger SSN mission.
You have a 2034 timeline. What's the greatest risk to that, do you think?
I think the greatest risk to the 2034 timeline, again, is it goes back to that. It's really understanding how are we going to get this system integrated into a platform that was never purpose-built for that. And it's also to be able to do that in a way so that we don't deter from the primary SSN mission. This will be a whole new infrastructure that we have to stand up. And so getting all of those things in place, getting the weapons system done, but as importantly, getting the fleet trained, getting all the things that we need to do, that's going to be one of the challenging parts of this.
Thank you. Mr. Hoagland, can you provide an update on NNSA's progress on the future warhead for Cyclamen?
Yes, Senator, thank you. Paralleling Admiral Wolfe's comments, we stood up a program office last summer. Among the first responsibilities of that office, they ran a very disciplined warhead selection process using over 30 metrics to grade and rank the suitable warheads for options. We have selected and identified the W80 family of warheads as most suitable for this purpose. This allows us to stay ahead of the interface documents that will be pursuing the engineering required and emphasis on staying very coupled to the Navy during development with the platform into which that warhead will go.
Thank you. I appreciate the thoughtful work that both NNSA and the Navy, along with STRATCOM and the combatant commanders, are doing to assess the best way forward for this program. And I appreciate the close communication with this subcommittee as design choices are considered. So thank you for that. General Bussiere. The Air Force is responsible for many of the components that comprise our NC-3 system, including delivering the new SAOC aircraft. Can you provide us with an update on that program?
So, Madam Chair, the Survivable Airborne Operations Center, the 747-8Is that will replace the...
Oh, Mike.
Yes, it is.
Can you get a little closer?
Yes.
Thank
so
you.
The SAOC weapon system that's going to replace the existing E-4B National Airborne Operations Center is fairly nascent in its execution from the contract award last year, but going very well. So the primary contractor has built facilities in Ohio, and they've purchased the original or the initial buy of 747-8Is, and they're going through the initial processes of it. We're also outlining the military construction to outfit Offutt Air Force Base. And I think most members of the committee are aware that we stood up the 95th Wing to take host of that capability as well as others in that portfolio.
What can you share about the 95th Wing that was stood up? What are the operations of the unit? How are they progressing at Offutt?
So they're literally, we just stood it up a few months ago. Colonel Lamont is the first commander. As most committee members are aware, he was the 595th Command and Control Group commander, which is the group that previously had the NAOC mission. He's standing up his command team, outfitting his organization, and we're giving him the resources to pull together. I think most committee members are aware when I first wanted to stand up this wing, it was bringing together both active duty, guard, and reserve elements in the realm of communications and control in our special space into the leadership oversight of one commander, and we're very pleased with its progress so far.
Good to hear. Thank you. Senator King.
Thank you. Admiral Wolfe, you used a term I've never heard before, stable on-time funding. What does that mean? Let's hope that we can make that happen. That's certainly the goal, and I understand how debilitating it is to not have stable on-time funding. Dr. Vann, I just understand that you're leaving federal service shortly after 15 distinguished years, and I just wanted to congratulate you and thank you for your extraordinary service to our country. Let me start with a question for you, Dr. Vann. The prior organization that preceded where you are now included chemical and biological defense and threat reduction. I don't think that's in the new job description. Where has that gone? Is that still being attended to somewhere?
No, so it actually is still a part of the implementation plan of the nuclear deterrent and chem biodefense policy and program. So it will be all pulled together into an organization.
It's going to stay in the new organization.
That is the hope in the current plan based off of the legislation.
Mr. Hoagland, if you were listening to the first panel, you won't be surprised by this question. You mentioned the phrase, the foundation is our workforce. How is your workforce? Do you have sufficient workforce? Did you have to go through rifts and fork in the road and people leaving? Where are you compared with where the organization was in terms of staffing on January 1st of this year?
Thank you, Senator King. We did recover. We have brought back all the terminated employees that were lost in February. The people I speak to and work with in NNSA, in particular in the weapons activities portfolio, are here for the mission. They're motivated by the mission. They recognize the multi-generational inflection point we're experiencing in the nuclear deterrent, and they're laser-focused, and they're delivering with some losses from the deferred resignation program. We undertook a process to identify critical needs, either from those absences or because of emergent requirements in the program, and we've shifted staff around to attend to the most important needs, and we continue to deliver.
One of my questions is the hiring freeze still in effect?
By and large, the hiring freeze is still in effect.
Well, that's what worries me is if people are taking deferred, whatever you call it, fork in the road retirement, and the hiring freeze is in effect, you could end up with some pretty important vacancies.
That's very true. With the Secretary's support, we have exempted the hiring freeze for the Office of Secure Transportation, and we're very pleased to note that we've been able to offer job opportunities, and we are starting a new class for Office of Secure Transportation this month to continue the pipeline into that particular mission space.
Thank you. General Bussiere, good to see you again.
Same here, Senator.
And thank you for the service that you're providing. We had some discussion in the Armed Services Committee this morning about Air Force availability. Do you have a figure for availability of your strike force? In other words, well, you know what I mean. What's the percentage of your force that's available at any given moment?
From a bomber perspective, Senator?
Correct.
So between the B-1, B-2, and B-52 force, we hover around the 50s for aircraft availability, just because of spare parts and the legacy weapon system sustainment.
In terms of spare parts, one of the things the committee is looking at is when we're acquiring new platforms that we also acquire the intellectual property so that we can make our own spare parts. I believe there should be a 3D printer in every depot and on every naval ship. Right now, is spare parts a bottleneck for you? Because to be honest, 50% availability, the commercial aircraft is 98% availability. They'd be long out of business if they had a 50% availability.
It's not necessarily unique to the bomber fleet. It's just
No, I understand. That was the number we had this morning for the Air Force generally.
The bomber fleet is challenged by what we call as legacy vendors that don't actually make the parts we need. So that's a challenge for the acquisition community to get those contracts put on order. As you know, the B-52 is 70 years plus old. The B-2's in its 30s, the B-1's in its 40s and 50s, depending on the year the aircraft was made. And we're using them a lot. So the demand signal for our bombers is at the highest level that I've seen it in my career, while we're also challenged to get the sustainment parts on the shelf for the legacy
I hope
fleet.
that could be a priority in terms of sustainment and maintenance and maintaining a higher level of availability. That's a better deal for the taxpayers, and it makes your service all the more lethal if it's available.
Without a doubt, and that's obviously the reason why we're going to be fielding the B-21 Raider platform to replace the B-1 and the B-2 is because of the age and the legacy fleet, and then modernizing the B-52H to the B-52J model.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator King. Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, thank you all for your service to our country. General Bussiere, the B-21 program is critical to the future bomber leg of the triad. Based on what you know of the current and projected demand commensurate to a great power competition paradigm with two near-peer nuclear adversaries, how many B-21s do you believe would be optimally needed to support U.S. war plans and deterrence? And what do you think the key drivers are going to be with regard to managing the procurement and sustainment right now, based on what you're saying, and recognizing that I think there's a lot of us who would like to see these B-21s come on at a higher rate than what they're currently planned for, but this is probably one of the best examples of a system which is working, it's on time, it's on budget. Can you share with us a little bit about what you think the needs are for this particular platform?
Yeah, Senator Rounds, very pleased with the progress so far of the B-21 Raider platform. As the committee is aware, we've had first flight. We have one aircraft, T-1, is in testing, developmental testing out at Edwards Air Force Base, and we have a classified number on the production line. Ellsworth Air Force Base is the first installation we'll field the B-21, and our construction projects to bed down that weapon system are going very well, also as well as the repair to the runway to field that capability. As the committee is aware, the program of record currently is at least 100. The Air Force back in 2018 and 19, I believe, testified before Congress that the right number at that time potentially could be as high as 145, and I understand General Cotton testified that to that effect this year. I support assessing the increase of the production from 100 to 145, but I think the real question for the department and for the nation is what's the right mix of long-range strike platforms versus other strike platforms? It's a reasonable question the nation has asked several times in the last year or two. And there are ongoing efforts, I believe, both on the Hill and in the Department of Defense to assess what the correct number of long-range strike platforms are in the Department of the Air Force.
And I think part of that also goes back to what exactly will the threat be? And part of what we're asking to be developed based on the NDAA last year was a study anyway as to how we handle two different theaters at the same time, because there's a general consensus out there that if we're going to have a significant problem with one of our near-peer adversaries in one theater, very high probability that we'd have a similar threat develop in a second theater, thus putting the demand out there to be able to respond in both locations with appropriate platforms. I'm going to come over to Dr. Vann for just a second. Can you share a little bit about the direction that you see the approach taking? And I know that either we talk about a new defense strategy, we look at revising somehow our current one. Can you share with us a little bit about the direction that you see in terms of our strategic response and what we can expect from the administration?
Sure, yes, sir. Secretary Hegseth, of course, approved an interim National Defense Strategic Guidance classified document, which really goes into some details about how the DoD is going to implement President Trump's peace through strength kind of agenda. And in there was some discussion about the prioritizing, planning, resourcing decisions that will be kind of entered into with a full national defense strategy. And as you know, the NDS requires a review of our force size, shape, posture, considerations, and all of the detailed prioritization of the threats, missions, and major investments. And we do anticipate an in-depth look in the NDS on our nuclear strategy and our posture, especially in this kind of new geopolitical environment. And I would anticipate broadly nuclear strategy and posture will be leveraging the work of things like the Strategic Posture Commission's analysis, as well as some of the updated information that we have about the geopolitical threat environment.
Do you have a timeline?
Sir, it is just begun and it is just underway, and our policy colleagues are working on pulling that together as we speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Admiral Wolfe, I want to come back to the SLCM and discussion. So you talked about, you stood up the program office. You are in the process of looking through a family of warheads to figure out what the warhead would be. You pulsed industry. You've been working with the fleet. And you talked about how to integrate this needed platform on a platform that wasn't designed for a nuclear weapon. And you mentioned that we can't deter, and I think I wrote this down as a quote, we can't deter from the primary SSN mission. the primary Virginia-class submarine attack, conventional attack mission. And that's my big concern.
Yes, sir.
Here. So explain to me how do we do that? And how do we integrate a nuclear weapon into a Virginia-class sub without impacting training, mission systems, security? I assume we're going to have Marines on board. Usually with nuclear weapons, we provide a contingent unless that is a decision that does not apply in this case. We've got to store these weapons. So my assumption, and I might be wrong, we would carry fewer torpedoes. This could possibly change the ops tempo of the submarine because now we have different systems that we have to maintain that are additional systems. We're going to be limited in the ports we can go in, so maybe even maintenance overseas and resupply could be impacted. I assume there's going to be additional operator positions for the nuclear enterprise on board. So what positions are we going to take away? So if you can go into a little bit about that and then come back to how this doesn't deter from the primary conventional mission.
Yes, sir. So acknowledge all your concerns. We've talked about those in the past. And so those are all the things as we work with the fleet, we are looking at what are the ways that we can architect the system to be able to do just what you said. Certainly there will be, I would tell you, there's not going to be zero impact. But as we've worked with the fleet, what we believe is we can come up with the right concepts of how do I train a crew that can deploy with this weapon to do the things that it needs to do that doesn't require the rest of the crew doing the missions they would normally do.
Where do these people sleep?
So we're going to work through that, sir. It's not going to take a large number of folks. Once you get that weapon on board, and just to address your concern about Marines, in a submarine environment, we don't need Marines. We don't need that type. We know how to do that in different ways. It's what we do on our SSBNs today. So we're gonna take the best of all of those, and we're gonna figure out how we do that and integrate that with a very small number of additional folks. And I can tell you, having done this a long time, it will be a small number of folks that actually have to operate that particular system, which will be different than all of the other systems that are on board.
So here. And Madam Chair, let me be clear here. Here's my concern. I understand we're going to try to do the best job we can at this, but we have an incredibly capable platform in the Virginia-class submarine.
And we still will.
Well, we do now, and it's a conventional platform that the Chinese and the Russians pretty much, but definitely the Chinese cannot compete with. And I'm concerned we come out of this and the likelihood that we have to use the conventional part of this, of a Virginia-class submarine in a conflict with China, is rather high if we got into a conflict. The probability that we would use the nuclear systems aboard this submarine are actually rather low. So we're going to sacrifice the exquisite capability of this platform, and it's going to become a little less capable. I don't know how less capable. My concern is it could be significant. My other concern is we've set $2 billion aside for the development of this. CBO estimates the cost of SLICM-N and its warhead at $10 billion between 2023 and 2032 if the program began in 2024. That amount does not cover production costs beyond 2032, nor does it include any of the costs for integrating the weapon system into the submarines, which I think is going to be substantial. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars. And then we have the additional costs beyond that of, security and operations and weapon storage costs. So I don't think this thing has been fully thought out. But again, my biggest concern about this, and I am not against having another tactical nuclear option, I just think the costs, not only the financial costs, but the cost to the conventional submarine fleet, in my view, is too high. And I come from the aviation background, so it's kind of hard for me to say that I think our conventional submarine force is unmatched anywhere in the world. And it is something where we have this substantial overmatch with the Chinese, and I feel we're putting it at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. General Bussiere, I urge you to work closely with Secretary Mink and also to be able to reach that next milestone that we have with Sentinel. The longer we delayed the decisions, the more budget uncertainty that program's going to face. And it's been determined that that is a program that is priority and that this country needs. Can you please describe the risks that we may incur if Sentinel is not adequately funded in fiscal year 2026 budget?
So, Madam Chair, I look forward to the opportunity for our new Secretary of the Air Force, Secretary Mink, to come visit Barksdale and get a complete update on all our, at least 2/3 of the nation's nuclear triad from Air Force Global Strike Command. As it relates to the Sentinel weapon system, I've said in several public forums that this July will be the 55th anniversary of fielding the Minuteman III capability, the 91st Missile Wing in Minot, North Dakota, 55 years ago. So the time for recapitalizing the land leg of the triad, quite frankly, was probably a decade or 2 decades ago. But here we are today in 2025, and we're restructuring the Sentinel weapon system to be able to field that capability at a very stressed time in our nation's history. I agree with the committee's position that the Sentinel weapon system needs to be funded sufficiently to get that program back on track and field it as expeditiously as we can as a department. And I'm confident that our secretary will have the same position.
Thank you, General. Admiral Wolfe, can you provide an update on the D5EL2 and the impact of the recent contract modification that took place?
Yes, ma'am. So D5LE2, as you know, is the replacement for the current system that we have. We've just come through a recent review to know that we're starting to understand the exact requirements, which dovetail from what we actually have today. So we've come through that. That program is on schedule. It's on track, and certainly the contract modifications were to continue down that path so that we can eventually get into our preliminary design review, our critical design review, with the goal of, right now the plan is to start flight testing of that system in 2033. We're challenging the team to pull that to the left to get early learning. It's things we've gotten, what we've learned in other programs like hypersonics. Get that testing done as quickly as you can. So the modifications you're referring to are to start us down that path and get industry ramped up to continue that development effort.
What do you see as the biggest threat to being able to execute those timelines?
Yes, ma'am. It's kind of what I said in my opening testimony. I think our biggest, I wouldn't say threat, but the thing we're going to watch closely is how we ramp industry back up. In all of these modernization programs, not this one, but things like rad-hard electronics, solid rocket motors, all of those things which are very small industrial base to begin with, and as we're all trying to do this at the same time, making sure we've got the industrial capacity and capability to meet all of our program needs to keep them on track.
Okay. Thank you. Senator King, other questions?
Just a couple. Admiral Wolfe, you're working with the British on the W93. How is that collaboration going?
Yes, sir. So I would tell you both programs, they're being done in parallel. Obviously, the UK design is a sovereign design. But as we work in parallel, both us and NNSA under the Mutual Defense Agreement, I think we have gotten to the point where both teams are moving forward in parallel. The right amount of data is being shared where it needs to be shared. And I would say the way that we're all three of our organizations are working together is really good right now.
Final question, General Bussiere. How are you doing on retaining pilots? That's been a problem with the fighter pilots. Is it a similar problem with bomber pilots, or is that a different breed of cat?
No, our rated management stressors are pretty agnostic of the platform. So we're experiencing similar challenges in retaining You know, historically, when the airlines are hiring, we have a retention problem, and when they're not hiring, we don't. There's different dynamics that affect an aviator's decision to stay in the Air Force, but we have similar challenges in Air Force Global Strike Command.
A couple of years ago, Senator Cotton and I had what amounted to a focus group with young Air Force pilots without the brass around, and to sort of get from them some information about their view of the retention issues and the pilot shortage issues. It was very interesting. We expected going into that meeting it was going to be all about bonuses and quality of life and housing and all those kinds of things. What they shared with us almost universally was they want to fly. And what was pushing them toward the door were desk assignments. These were people that joined the military, and they don't necessarily want to be a general. They want to fly airplanes. And I thought that was a very interesting insight that came across to Tom Cotton and I very strongly. And I just commend that to you for your thinking in terms of retention.
Senator Kenner, that's a universal aspect of retention for aviators in the Department of the Air Force. And across the board, the department is aggressively trying to come up with not only new ways for generating aviators through our pilot pipeline, but also coming up with programs to convince our aviators of staying in service to their nation and the Air Force.
One way may be to have parallel tracks. You're on the pilot track or you're on the officer track, and it may be that some people choose to stay with flying as opposed to moving up in the ranks. But I just wanted to share that with you because the impression came through so dramatically to us that this was one of the principal issues. So I just again wanted to share that insight.
Absolutely, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator King. Thank you to our panel members today. Appreciate you being here and providing us with important information. With that, the hearing is adjourned.